Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about why, if you are training really hard, you can't handle large amounts of training volume. And I mean large amounts of training volume in the amount that some of the academic world are promoting these days. And what I mean by training hard, it comes down to not necessarily the bodybuilder term intensity, but let's stick with the exercise science and strength conditioning definition. How do we define intensity? It's not ambiguous, right? The bodybuilding world creates very ambiguous terms like that, and they change them around, and they'll say stuff like intensity. It just means taking sets beyond failure, or whatever it is that they define it as. They don't even clearly define it. Whereas in exercise science, lifting intensity is defined as the percentage of the 1 rep max you're using. So if 500 pounds is your all-out max, then 500 pounds is 100% intensity and 400 pounds is 80% intensity, right? 450 is around 90% intensity. Okay, this is very easy to define. Now, you'll get people who say, well, I don't know what my 1 rep max is. Yeah, because you're probably a lazy pussy and you're scared to train hard and scared to lift heavy. Which comes down to what we see in a lot of the academic circles, unfortunately. And that's the problem that we have, is that there are certain academic circles who are trying to push ultra high volume, even though the majority of studies, very well constructed studies, completely disagree with their studies that they're doing, that aren't even as good sometimes, and they make up the majority consensus. A lot of these people who are pushing the very high volumes, if you know anything about them and the things they promote in their mindsets or have seen any of them train, they're generally pussies. And it shows in what they're trying to promote, because essentially they are trying to find ways to not train hard. They're trying to promote not training hard because they know a big segment of their potential audience out there. Because all these guys are involved in selling books or programs, seminars and stuff, right? Aren't they? There's way more money to be made on that than their academic end. Let's just call it what it is. It is. It's about making money, marketing to lazy people. Okay? And that's the reason all these really high volumes get promoted. If you are training really hard, you're not going to be able to reach the volumes you're doing. If your sets are close to limit sets, or they are limit sets, you're lifting really heavy weight with a sufficient amount of volume, you are not going to be able to handle these ultra high volumes. But here's the beauty of it. You're not going to make less gains for it. Okay? And you guys have watched me make gains up into my 40s here. You watch the way I've been training, somewhat recently, the last year or so. The phases to where I just work the hardest and just do heavy ass busting work, instead of a heavy focus on too much volume, what ends up happening? I end up getting stronger, and I'm getting more jacked, set PRs. I mean, that's how I broke the 600 squat originally. Right? Just focused volume. Training really hard. And here's what I would say with some of that. A lot of times when we start talking about a lot of this stimulus to fatigue, what is that? That's about so that you can do more volume. And when we start saying certain exercises, the big heavy axial loading exercises, and I used to promote and buy into this to some extent because I believe those circles, so I started realizing these circles of academics are trying to make money and other stuff. They have a financial vested interest in that. And when you really start accepting those things, you realize that the hardest exercises are also the hardest to recover from. And you know what? That's fine, because we can focus on recovery and just getting really effective work in. In other words, there's nothing wrong with doing heavy squats. There's nothing wrong with doing heavy deadlifts, even from a hypertrophic perspective. Now, you should be doing more than just those things, and I do, and I hope you do, but we can't handle a lot of volume on them. We can't. Particularly if they're getting near limit sets, like what you guys are seeing me do with some of this stuff, doing sets of 5 with 80% of my maxes. That will get tiring very, very quickly on squats and deadlifts. It'll even get tiring on good mornings. To some extent, even the bench. It is fatiguing. It's very, very hard. But you know what? You get a lot of stimulus out of it. We could argue the stimulus to fatigue ratios aren't amazing, but does it matter since we know we can't handle large amounts of volume if we put a great amount of effort into the volume that we are doing? It pays off. We get large dividends from it. And then we can add other supplemental lifts on the back end. Okay? And we can take those to pretty much limit sets and push for progression and take those to failure on a lot of them too. Right? Not to just squat, deadlift, and good morning, although I push good mornings pretty hard. But you know what? If you wanted to build a lower body base, if you're doing squat variations, deadlift variations, especially you're doing a couple different types of deadlifts, a couple different types of squats, you're doing good mornings and good morning variations, you can build one hell of a lower body base off just those 3 exercise variations. Now, I do more than that, and I recommend that you do more than that. At least one more exercise of some type in there, some extra posterior chain stuff. I choose to use usually glute ham raises, reverse hypers, sled drags. But you know what? You can build a monstrous lower body doing that. Maybe for you, it might be you need to do glute bridges. It's going to depend. It's going to depend on what you need to do. But that works. And you can't handle a lot of it. You start doing maxes and then sets of 5s with 80%, sets of 3s with 85%. You can't handle many sets per week. But my God, will you get big and strong off the sets that you can do. Especially if you're willing to come in and hit your weaker points. If your hamstrings are weak and you start doing 3 sets of glute ham raises to failure, or even if you don't have that, even some hamstring curls to failure. If, say, your hamstrings are a weak link on some of those, you will make tremendous gains. You make tremendous gains. Same thing with your upper body stuff. You do a couple different type of pulls. I don't care whether it's rows, barbell rows, Pendlay rows, which I have most of my lifters do, inverted rows, chest supported rows, pull-ups, chin-ups. You start getting focused really hard on getting strong on a couple of different pulls so that you get a couple different angles in, particularly if you're already deadlifting, which you should be doing. Back is going to get jacked. You start doing a couple different types of press, a couple different angles, whether it's flat and incline, flat bench plus dips, flat bench and overhead press, a couple different angles thrown in there, and then and you push them really hard with high intensity, heavy weights, and then you come behind it and do a little bit of fatigue work for your weakest links, whether it's your triceps or your delts or whatever's lacking there. Come in and do a bit of pump work to failure, and I do mean to failure. It's going to happen. Moderate amounts of training volume will get you jacked and strong. And the thing is, you can't handle the large amounts of volume. If you try to do endless amounts of volume, that's when you get hurt. The heavy weight doesn't hurt you. It's doing too much total work. But the problem is that everyone wants to train lazy. They want to train lazy, and they're afraid to get under the heavy weights. And I'll admit, some guys on the minimalist end, let's be honest, some of you guys are get lazy with it, and you don't want to do any of the supplemental work. And I think that's equally bad. So I'll call you guys out also. That's being lazy. If you need to be doing some tricep work, then you're not going to get there with just heavy bench and overhead press. If your triceps are lagging, all your other pressing will go up if you just spend some time working on your triceps. Okay? And the same can be said for whatever is lagging for you. But the point here is that, guys, people just simply do not train hard enough. They think they're training hard. The guys think they're training hard because they're coming and doing triple drop sets on curls. And by the way, I don't recommend drop sets. Drop sets are not hard. They're perceived as hard. They're lazy. because they let you do less work, right? Doing less work per set. And you end up just getting inflamed. Inflammation from overuse. No, train harder. Harder means a very heavy weight for the amount of reps you're using, and that can be scaled off of 1 rep max calculators. Right? But if you're training truly hard, you can't handle large amounts of volume. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.